Have you ever felt the heat of a fire burning so fiercely that the very air around it seems to warp and bend? Close your eyes for just a second. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a colossal arena. The acrid, suffocating stench of boiling oil rises, clawing at your lungs. You can hear the thick, viscous liquid bubbling and churning violently inside a massive bronze cauldron. The intense heat strikes your face, scorching the outer layer of your skin. And the most terrifying part of it all, that cauldron of death has been prepared exclusively for you. They say that no flesh and blood can survive being cast into it. Skin melts instantly. Bones turn to ash amidst an agonizing pain so profound that the human mind cannot even begin to comprehend it. If you stood before that boiling vat, surrounded by thousands of gloating eyes thirsting for your destruction, what would you do? Would you fall to your knees and beg for mercy? Or would you renounce everything you ever believed in just to cling to your life? But in the year 92 AD, outside the Porta Latina in Rome, there was a man who did neither. He did not tremble. He did not scream. He was an old man with snow-white hair, a long beard resting on his chest, and eyes as calm as the deepest, stillest waters. His name was John, Saint John the Apostle. He was not just an ordinary prisoner. He was the last one, the final surviving apostle of Jesus Christ. Understand this. The mighty Roman Empire under Emperor Domitian did not just want to kill an old man. They wanted to kill a memory. All the others were already dead. Peter was crucified upside down. Paul was beheaded. Thomas was pierced with a spear. One by one, those who had walked alongside the Christ had been brutally slaughtered. Only a single flickering flame remained in the dark night of the empire. Only John. If John died, the final voice that had directly heard the Sermon on the Mount, the man who had rested his head on the chest of the Lord at the Last Supper, would be silenced forever. Domitian knew this perfectly well. He didn't just want John to disappear. He wanted to orchestrate the most horrific spectacle imaginable to utterly crush the hopes of the faithful who were hiding in the shadows. A quick death by the sword was too merciful. No, he chose boiling oil, a torture designed not only to obliterate the physical body, but to break the spirit, to prove to the entire world that no power in the universe could save this frail old man from the wrath of Rome. As the soldiers trudged forward, roughly stripping away the apostle's thin cloak, the crowd held its breath, waiting for a scream, a plea for mercy. But what happened next? What took place right inside that blazing cauldron of oil was an event, a phenomenon that defied every law of physics and human logic. A miracle so earth-shattering that even the supreme authority of the Roman Empire was forced to tremble in fear. Do you wonder what power could make even the fiercest of flames bow down? Stay until the end, because the truth of what happened at the Latin Gate that day is not just a page in history. It is the answer to the darkest fears hiding within your own mind. The order was given. The executioners, heavily armored and sweating profusely from the blinding heat of the furnace, seized the frail apostle. They did not show a shred of mercy. With a brutal, synchronized heave, they lifted John and plunged him directly into the heart of the roaring, boiling cauldron. Imagine that exact fraction of a second. The moment flesh makes contact with scalding, lethal liquid. The Roman crowd, bloodthirsty and ruthless, leaned forward over the barricades, waiting for the inevitable shriek of agony. Emperor Domitian, sitting high upon his elevated throne, curled his lips into a satisfied, arrogant sneer. He truly believed he was about to witness the final breath of Christianity. the total eradication of the name of Jesus from the face of the earth. But the scream never came. Instead, a deafening, unnatural silence descended upon the Porta Latina. It was so quiet you could hear the oil bubbling. The executioners, who had instinctively stepped back to avoid the splashing, flesh-melting liquid, slowly crept forward, their eyes wide with absolute, paralyzing disbelief. What they saw inside that cauldron defied every law of nature, every rule of the physical world they had ever known. John was not melting. He was not burning. He was not even thrashing in pain. There he stood, waist-deep in the violently boiling oil, his face radiating a profound, unearthly peace. The scalding liquid, which should have stripped the flesh from his bones in seconds, touched his skin as if it were nothing more than a cool, refreshing bath. He looked up, not at the cruel emperor, not at the stunned executioners, but towards the heavens. His lips moved in a quiet, serene prayer of gratitude. Have you ever faced a situation in your own life where total destruction seemed absolutely inevitable? A moment where every logical voice in your head told you that it was over, that there was no way out, that the fire you were in was going to consume you? The Roman Empire represented the ultimate, unstoppable power of that age. They wielded fear as their absolute weapon. But what happens when the fear the world tries to instill meets a peace that surpasses all human understanding? For Emperor Domitian, this was not just a failed execution. It was a terrifying revelation. As he looked down at the old man, a chilling realization washed over him. John was not alone in that cauldron. An unseen shield, an invisible but omnipotent presence, had stepped into the fire with him. The same God who had delivered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the fiery furnace of Babylon centuries ago had not changed. He was right there, standing in the boiling oil of Rome. Look at the emperor now. The most powerful man on the face of the earth, a man who commanded legions and demanded to be worshipped as a god, is suddenly shrinking back into his gilded throne. His face, moments ago twisted in a cruel sneer, is now pale and entirely drained of color. Panic sets in. He raises a trembling hand and orders his royal guards to pull the apostle out. But the guards hesitate. They are paralyzed, terrified to even step near the sacred aura of that cauldron. The atmosphere in the arena has completely shifted. Rome is no longer the judge. Rome is the one being judged. When St. John finally steps out of the boiling oil, he does not have a single blister on his flesh. His white hair is completely unsinged. The silence of the crowd is not just shock. It is the profound, overwhelming realization of the divine. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of Romans who had come to watch a gruesome execution walked away from the Porta Latina that day with their pagan beliefs shattered to pieces. The fire that was meant to finally destroy Christianity had just ignited it in the very heart of the Roman Empire. But the story does not end at the Latin Gate. And this is exactly where this ancient history intersects with your life right now. Emperor Domitian realized he could not kill John. The fire refused to consume him. So the empire immediately changed its strategy. If they could not destroy his physical body, they would try to break his mind. They would isolate him. Domitian banished the elderly apostle to the remote, desolate island of Patmos. It was a brutal Roman penal colony, a barren wasteland made of jagged rocks and endless, unforgiving sea. John was stripped of his community, torn from his followers, and left to die in absolute loneliness. Have you ever experienced this in your own journey? You survived the boiling oil of your life, the sudden sickness, the financial ruin, the bitter betrayal. You miraculously made it through the fire when everyone around you expected you to break. But instead of a glorious victory, you suddenly found yourself on your own island of Patmos, You found yourself isolated, feeling profoundly alone, exiled into a season of deep silence and separation. The enemy couldn't kill you, so he isolated you. And in the quiet, you start to wonder, God, did I survive the fire just for this? To be abandoned in the wilderness? But here is the profound spiritual secret that the Roman Empire did not understand, and the secret that you must grasp today. Isolation is not abandonment. For St. John, Patmos was not a graveyard. It was an observatory. It was in that absolute isolation, stripped of all earthly distractions and human comforts, that the heavens finally cracked open. It was there, on that lonely rocky shore, that Jesus Christ appeared to him in blinding glory, handing him the ultimate vision of the future, the book of Revelation. Patmos was not a quiet spiritual retreat. It was the Alcatraz of the ancient Roman world, a jagged volcanic rock protruding from the unforgiving Aegean Sea, utterly devoid of comfort, pity, or hope. It was a place explicitly designed to break men. Prisoners here were not simply locked in cells, they were condemned to grueling, bone-crushing labor in the dark, suffocating stone quarries. Now picture an old man, well over 90 years old, his hands calloused, his back bent under the weight of Roman cruelty, forced to swing a pickaxe in the blistering sun. This was the psychological warfare of Emperor Domitian. If the boiling oil could not destroy John's physical body, the absolute desolation of Patmos would surely destroy his mind. The empire wanted him to wake up every single morning to the sound of crashing waves, look out at the endless, empty horizon, and realize that no one was coming for him. The goal was to make him feel utterly forgotten, to make him believe that God had performed a spectacular miracle in Rome, only to abandon him to rot in the wilderness. I want to pause right here and speak directly to you. How many times have you heard that exact same whisper in the dark? You prayed for a miracle, and God delivered you. You survived a crisis that should have destroyed your family, your career, or your health. You walked out of the fire. But right after the victory, you were suddenly thrust into a season of intense, agonizing waiting. A wilderness. And the enemy leans in and whispers, "If God really loves you, why are you still struggling? Why are you so alone? He saved you just to forget about you." That is the lie of Patmos. The enemy uses isolation to create despair. But what you must understand today is that God uses isolation to create focus. John did not break. He did not curse God. Instead, every strike of his hammer against the stone became a prayer. The more Rome tried to squeeze the life out of him, the more his spirit expanded. Because there is a profound spiritual law at work here. When the world strips everything away from you, when the noise of the crowd and the distractions of life are finally silenced, your spiritual ears become tuned to a frequency that the physical world cannot hear. It happened on a Sunday. The Bible simply calls it the Lord's Day. John was sitting alone, perhaps looking out over the vast, empty sea, his body exhausted, his earthly vision dimming with age. But suddenly, the wind shifted. The atmosphere grew thick, heavy with an electric, terrifying holiness. And then he heard it. A voice right behind him, so loud, so overwhelming, that it sounded like the roar of a mighty trumpet piercing through the fabric of reality. It was not the voice of a Roman guard. It was a voice he had not heard in over 60 years. What happens next is the greatest unveiling of the spiritual realm in human history. John turns toward the voice that sounds like a roaring trumpet. But what he sees is not the humble carpenter from Galilee. He does not see the broken, bleeding man he wept for at the foot of the cross. He sees the King of the universe in his unrestrained, glorified majesty. Imagine the sheer terror and awe of that moment. John describes hair as white as snow and eyes like a blazing, consuming fire. His feet glow like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice, no longer a whisper, but the terrifying roar of rushing, violent waters. Out of his mouth extends a sharp, double-edged sword, and his face shines with the blinding, absolute brilliance of the sun at its highest peak. John's reaction is immediate and instinctual. He writes, "When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead." Think deeply about this paradox. This is the exact same man who stood unflinching in a cauldron of boiling oil. The man who stared into the eyes of the most ruthless emperor in the world without shedding a single tear or begging for his life. The might of the Roman Empire could not make John drop to his knees. The back-breaking stones of Patmos could not crush his spirit. But a single glimpse of the true, unbridled glory of Jesus Christ causes his physical body to instantly shut down. Why? Because the fear of the Lord completely eradicates the fear of man. When you truly realize the magnitude of the God who stands beside you, the fiery threats of your enemies suddenly become utterly meaningless. And then comes the most beautiful, heart-stopping moment of the entire encounter. This figure of absolute, terrifying power reaches out his right hand, the same hand that holds the stars of the cosmos, and lays it gently on the trembling old man. He speaks a command that shatters the silence of that desolate island. "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades." Do you see what just happened? Emperor Domitian thought he held the keys to John's life and death. The Roman Empire believed they had the final say by locking him away in a watery grave. But Jesus steps directly into John's prison and declares, "Rome does not hold your keys, I do." How many times have you let a person, a medical diagnosis, or a financial crisis tell you that they hold the keys to your future? How often have you let the emperors of this world dictate your destiny? The living one is standing in your wilderness right now, placing his hand on your shoulder, reminding you that your life is not in the hands of your circumstances. It is in his. But Jesus didn't just come to comfort his beloved friend. He came with an urgent, world-shaking mission. Write, therefore, what you have seen. John was about to be shown the end of the world. Yet, before the cosmic seals are broken, before the 4 horsemen are unleashed, and before the great dragon falls from the sky, Jesus forces John to look at something else first. He forces him to look directly at the true condition of the believers back on the mainland. And the secret he reveals about them is absolutely chilling. Jesus does not immediately show John the end of the world. He doesn't start with the beasts rising from the sea or the stars falling from the sky. Before the apocalypse begins, the piercing, fiery eyes of Christ look directly at the 7 churches in Asia Minor, the very heart of the early Christian faith. He dictates 7 letters. And the secret he reveals is more terrifying to a believer than any Roman executioner. You see, the churches thought they were doing fun. They were busy. They were enduring. But Jesus strips away the polished outward appearance and exposes a chilling, hidden decay. He looks at Ephesus, a church that was fiercely orthodox, working tirelessly and aggressively rooting out false teachers. From the outside, they looked like the perfect, bulletproof ministry. But Jesus says the one thing that shatters their religious illusion: "You have forsaken the love you had at first." They had the truth, but they had lost the fire. They were doing the work of the Lord, but they had forgotten the Lord of the work. And then he looks at Laodicea, a wealthy, comfortable church. They proudly declared, "I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing." They believed their earthly comfort was the ultimate proof of God's blessing. But the King of the universe looks at them with absolute sorrow and says, "You do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked." They were so comfortable, so lukewarm, that Jesus warned he was about to spit them out of his mouth. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. This is not a message for the pagan Romans. This is a message for the people sitting right in the pews. Have you ever found yourself in that exact same spiritual condition? You go to church. You know the right words to say. You defend the truth online. To everyone around you, your faith looks rock solid. But deep down, in the quiet, unguarded moments of the night, you know the terrifying truth. The fire is gone. You are running on religious autopilot. You have become so accustomed to the safe routine of Christianity that you have completely lost the romance, the desperation, and the wild, consuming love you once had for Jesus. The Roman Empire tried to destroy the church from the outside with boiling oil, swords, and isolation. But Jesus reveals that the far greater danger is the silent, comfortable death of the heart from the inside. Persecution creates martyrs, but comfort creates apathy. Yet, even in this severe warning, the grace of God is overwhelmingly beautiful. He does not write these letters to condemn his people. He writes them to wake them up. He stands at the door and knocks. The King who holds the keys to death and Hades is humbly asking for an invitation back into your heart. But as John finishes writing these 7 letters, the atmosphere on the island of Patmos violently shifts once again. The letters were just the preparation. The real storm is about to break, because suddenly a door opens in heaven itself. As John finishes writing the letters, the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of Patmos completely vanishes. The sound of crashing waves is replaced by that same terrifying voice, sounding like a trumpet, speaking a command that rips through the very fabric of space and time. "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." Instantly, the apostle is caught up in the Spirit. He is no longer an exiled prisoner on a barren rock. He is standing before an open door in heaven, looking directly into the ultimate control room of the universe. And what he sees makes the glory of the Roman Empire look like dust in the wind. He sees a throne, but this is not the blood-stained, temporary seat of Emperor Domitian. This throne is surrounded by an emerald rainbow, pulsing with blinding, unapproachable light. Flashes of lightning and peals of thunder constantly erupt from its center. Before it stretches a sea of glass, clear as crystal. Surrounding the throne are 24 elders in white garments, wearing crowns of gold, who constantly fall on their faces in absolute, terrifying worship. Think deeply about the psychological impact of this vision on an old man who has spent months being tormented by the most powerful government on earth. Rome wanted John to look at his chains and believe that Caesar was the ultimate authority. But God pulls back the curtain to show John the undeniable, staggering truth. Caesar is just a man playing dress-up. The true emperor of the cosmos is seated on the throne, and he has never lost control for a single fraction of a second. Have you forgotten who is sitting on the throne of your life? When the terrible medical reports come in, when the bank accounts run dry, when the people you trusted walk away, it is so easy to believe that the chaos is in charge. It is easy to look at the Roman Empire of your circumstances and bow your head in defeat. But the door in heaven is still open. If you could just look up, you would see that the throne is occupied. and the one sitting on it is not pacing back and forth in panic. But as John stares at this scene of absolute majesty, a sudden, desperate crisis unfolds right in the middle of heaven. In the right hand of the one seated on the throne is a scroll, sealed with 7 seals. It contains the destiny of the world, the final justice, the ultimate resolution to all human suffering. A mighty angel steps forward and shouts with a loud voice that shakes the heavens, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" Silence. Absolute, crushing silence fills the cosmos. No one in heaven, no one on earth, no one under the earth is found worthy. The scroll remains locked. The future remains blocked. And for the first time since he faced the boiling oil, John breaks down. He writes, "I wept and wept because no one was found who was worthy." Have you ever wept like that? Have you ever stared at a closed door in your life, a situation so completely sealed shut that no amount of money, intelligence, or human effort could pry it open? You look around, and there is no one worthy, no one capable of fixing it. But just as John's bitter tears begin to fall, one of the elders steps forward, places a hand on his trembling shoulder, and reveals the greatest plot twist in human history. The tears are still warm on John's wrinkled face when the elder leans in. His voice is firm, filled with an ancient, unshakable confidence. "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." Imagine John's anticipation in that split second. He turns his head, wiping his eyes, fully expecting to see a ferocious, roaring beast. He expects to see a cosmic warrior, a supreme conqueror arriving with an iron sword to brutally avenge the blood of the martyrs. He expects a king who looks like a Roman Caesar, only infinitely more terrifying. But when John looks to the very center of the throne, he does not see a lion. He sees a lamb. And not a pristine, untouchable creature. He sees a lamb looking as if it had been violently slain, bearing the brutal, unmistakable scars of crucifixion. This is the ultimate paradox of the Christian faith and the absolute antithesis of the Roman Empire. Rome worshipped dominance. They worshipped the eagle, the sword, the boot on the neck of the defeated. Emperor Domitian believed that true power was demonstrated by throwing an old man into boiling oil. But the God of the universe reveals that supreme, undefeated power is not found in shedding the blood of your enemies. It is found in sacrificing your own. The lion conquered the cosmos by becoming the bleeding lamb. I want to ask you a deeply personal question. How many times have you prayed for a lion to show up in your life? You are in the middle of a brutal battle, and you want God to roar. You want Him to spectacularly obliterate your problems, to crush your enemies, to bring down swift and visible vengeance on the people who betrayed you. You want a display of absolute dominance. But what if the victory doesn't look like a roar? What if your triumph is hidden in the quiet, enduring sacrifice of the Lamb? What if your ultimate victory comes not from destroying your opposition, but from enduring the fire with grace, forgiving those who threw you into the oil, and trusting that the scars you bear are actually the marks of an overcoming king? In heaven, the scars of Jesus are not covered up. They are His highest badge of honor. As the scarred lamb steps forward and takes the scroll from the right hand of the Almighty, the cosmos literally explodes in worship. The elders fall down, the living creatures bow, and then a choir of 10,000 times 10,000 angels begins to roar a new song that shakes the crystal sea. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. The victory is secured. But heaven's worship is merely the prelude. Because as the Lamb reaches out to break the very first seal on that ancient scroll, the singing suddenly stops. The four horsemen are waiting in the shadows, and what is unleashed upon the earth next will force all of humanity to face its darkest hour. As the Lamb breaks the first seal, the fabric of the vision violently rips open. John watches in sheer terror as a rider on a white horse bursts forth, holding a bow, given a crown, riding out as a conqueror bent on conquest. But he is not alone. Another seal shatters. A red horse charges, its rider wielding a massive sword, given the terrifying power to strip peace from the earth and make men slaughter one another. Then the black horse of famine, holding scales, turning the basic necessities of life into unaffordable luxuries. And finally, the pale horse. Its rider's name is Death, and Hades follows closely behind him. In the span of a few breathless moments, John witnesses the unraveling of human civilization. War, economic collapse, devastating famine, and mass death. It is a terrifying sequence that mirrors the darkest fears of every generation. But I want you to pay very close attention to a profound psychological secret hiding behind the scenes of this chaos. The horsemen do not ride on their own authority. They do not break out of their stables and hijack the universe. They only ride after the Lamb breaks the seal. They only move when heaven allows it. Have you ever looked at the news or stared at the sudden devastation in your own life and felt like everything was spinning completely out of control? Have you felt like the horsemen of sickness, financial ruin, or broken relationships are running rampant over your life without any supervision? The book of Revelation is not meant to scare you. It is meant to anchor you. The chaos is not a sign that God has lost control. The chaos is actually unfolding under the sovereign, watchful eye of the one sitting on the throne. The Lamb holds the scroll. The enemy can only go as far as the leash allows. As the fifth seal is broken, the focus shifts from the devastation on earth to a profound, heartbreaking scene in heaven. John looks under the altar and sees the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God. These are his friends. These are the believers who didn't survive the Roman arenas, the ones who were fed to lions, the ones who were crucified. They cry out in a loud, desperate voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Listen to the raw, unfiltered pain in that question. How long? Have you ever cried out that exact same prayer? You have done the right thing, you have remained faithful, yet you are the one suffering while the people who hurt you seem to be thriving. You are looking up at heaven, exhausted, begging, "How long, Lord, am I going to have to endure this injustice?" God does not silence them. He does not tell them that their pain is invalid or that they lack faith. Instead, each of them is gently handed a white robe, and they are told to rest just a little while longer. The ultimate justice is coming, but the story is not quite finished yet. Because when the sixth seal is finally broken, the universe itself begins to violently tear apart. John has seen it all. He has seen the boiling oil of Rome, the jagged rocks of Patmos, the terrifying horsemen, and the shaking of the stars. But now, as the vision reaches its ultimate climax, the Lamb of God wipes away every tear from the apostle's eyes and shows him the final destination of human history. He sees a new heaven and a new earth. He sees the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. There is no temple in this city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. There is no need for the sun or the moon, because the glory of God provides the light. The streets are of pure gold, and the gates are made of single, massive pearls. But the most beautiful part of the vision is not the gold or the jewels. It is the promise that echoes through the corridors of eternity. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Think about the profound irony of this moment. The Roman Empire thought they were the eternal city. They thought their power was absolute. But as John sits on his lonely island, penning these final words, he is looking at the total collapse of every earthly empire and the birth of a kingdom that will never end. He survived the fire of Rome so that he could tell you that the fire doesn't have the final word. History tells us that after the death of Emperor Domitian, John was finally released from his exile on Patmos. He returned to Ephesus as an old, legendary lion of the faith. He was the only apostle who did not die a violent martyr's death, because God had a specific mission for his survival. He was the designated witness of the end. In his final days, it is said he would simply repeat one phrase to his followers: "Little children, love one another." As we close this journey today, I want to speak to the John inside of you. Perhaps you are currently in your own season of boiling oil. Perhaps you feel exiled, isolated, and forgotten on a rocky island of your own. You look at the world, and you see only chaos and horsemen. But remember the man at the Porta Latina. The oil could not burn him because the one who created the fire was standing inside it with him. Your circumstances do not hold the keys to your life. The Lamb who was slain, the Lion who triumphed, he is the one holding your future in his scarred hands. If this story has touched your heart, if it has given you even a spark of hope in your darkness, I invite you to join our community. We are here to walk this path of faith together, to remind each other that the story ends in victory. Please subscribe and share this with someone who feels like they are walking through fire right now. Let them know they are not alone. Thank you for staying until the end. May the peace of the one who was, and who is to come rest upon your soul today and forever. God bless you. God.